President Trump flew to Beijing with one of the most powerful men in the AI industry suddenly added to the trip, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang. And for a moment, it looked like something big might happen. Trump left the summit telling reporters that something could happen on chip exports. Markets listened. NVIDIA watchers listened. Chinese tech companies listened. Because if one deal had the power to change the mood around the U.S. China AI race, it was NVIDIA's H200 chip. But then the dust settled. No breakthrough, no major announcement, no shipment surge. And most importantly, not a single NVIDIA H200 has reportedly shipped to China since the sales were first authorized. That is the strange part of this story, because the H200 is not frozen simply because Washington said no. Washington already said yes. The United States has approved export licenses for major Chinese companies to buy NVIDIA's H200 AI chips. Around 10 Chinese firms, reportedly including Alibaba, Tencent, ByteDance, and JD.com, have been cleared. Lenovo and Foxconn have also been authorized as distributors. So on paper, the door is open. The chips are approved. The licenses exist. The buyers are waiting. NVIDIA wants the sale. Trump has suggested something could happen, but the chips are still not moving. Why? Because the real blockage may not be in Washington anymore. It may be in Beijing, and that is what makes this story so important. For months, the public debate around AI chips has focused on American export controls. The normal assumption is simple. America has the advanced chips, China wants them, and Washington decides whether China can get them. But the H200 situation is more complicated. The U.S. has created a framework that allows certain NVIDIA H200 sales to Chinese companies, but under strict conditions. One of the key requirements is that the chips ordered by Chinese clients must be used only inside China. That seems straightforward at first, but Beijing has been pushing its own technology companies in the opposite direction. Chinese authorities want major domestic tech firms to support local chip makers and limit their dependence on NVIDIA. At the same time, Chinese companies have reportedly been told to use NVIDIA chips mainly for overseas operations while strengthening domestic compute infrastructure at home. And there is the deadlock. The U.S. license says the chips must be used in China. Beijing does not want Chinese firms relying on those NVIDIA chips inside China. So the deal is approved, licensed, and still frozen. That is why this is not just a normal trade dispute. This is a collision between two different strategies. Washington wants to control where advanced chips go and how they are used. Beijing wants to control the direction of its own AI infrastructure and reduce dependence on American semiconductors. And in the middle sits NVIDIA. For NVIDIA, China used to be a much bigger part of the business. Before export controls tightened, China represented a major revenue stream. But in recent quarters, NVIDIA's China revenue has reportedly fallen sharply. The company's own guidance has even assumed zero revenue from China for the current quarter. That is a huge change. NVIDIA is still the king of AI chips globally. Its GPUs are powering data centers, training models, and driving the AI infrastructure boom. But in China, the ground is shifting. And Huawei is the company benefiting from that shift. While diplomats were talking, Chinese AI companies were moving. DeepSeek's latest model has reportedly been optimized to run on Huawei processors. Tencent has signaled that Chinese GPU supply is expected to improve through 2026. Alibaba has said its own T-head proprietary GPUs have achieved scaled mass production. These are not random announcements. They are signs of a coordinated move toward domestic compute. And the most important example is DeepSeek. DeepSeek V4 reportedly adapted to Huawei's Ascend chips, marking a major moment for China's AI ecosystem. This matters because the question is no longer whether Chinese companies can run smaller experiments on domestic chips. The question is whether major frontier AI platforms can be built, tuned, optimized, and deployed on Chinese hardware. If that answer becomes yes, NVIDIA's position in China changes permanently. This does not mean Huawei has already beaten NVIDIA. NVIDIA's chips remain extremely powerful. NVIDIA's software ecosystem is still a massive advantage. CUDA, developer tools, data center systems, networking, supply chain relationships, and years of optimization all give NVIDIA a moat that is very difficult to copy. But China does not need Huawei to beat NVIDIA everywhere immediately. It needs Huawei to become good enough for the workloads that matter most inside China. That is a very different goal, and that is why inference is so important. Training a frontier model from scratch is still one of the hardest jobs in AI computing. It demands enormous compute power, stable software, advanced networking, and reliable hardware at massive scale. NVIDIA remains extremely strong there. But inference is different. Inference is what happens when a trained model is used in the real world. Every chatbot response, every AI search result, every coding suggestion, every enterprise AI assistant, every customer service automation, all of that depends on inference. And inference is where companies care deeply about cost, availability, and local control. If Huawei chips can handle enough inference workloads at acceptable performance, then Chinese companies may decide that domestic control is worth more than waiting for the best possible NVIDIA hardware. That is the bet Beijing appears to be making. It is not just a trade posture. It is a structural bet that the domestic performance gap will close fast enough for China's AI companies to manage the transition. In simple words, China may be saying, we may not have the absolute best chip today, but we would rather build our future on hardware we control. That changes the whole meaning of the H200 deadlock. This is not just about whether Trump can make a deal. It is about whether China still wants the deal badly enough. Jensen Huang's last-minute addition to the Beijing trip showed urgency. According to reports, Trump personally called him after seeing coverage that he had not been invited. That made the moment look dramatic, almost like CEO diplomacy could unlock the stalled chip flow. But the outcome showed the limits of that approach. Because if the obstruction were procedural, maybe a summit could fix it. If the issue were one missing approval or one political misunderstanding, maybe a high-level meeting could break the logjam. But this problem is structural. The United States wants to sell the chips under rules that keep them controlled. China wants its biggest tech companies to strengthen domestic suppliers and reduce reliance on U.S. silicon. Those two goals do not easily fit together. That is why the H200 deal remains stuck. Approved but not moving. Licensed but not delivered. Possible but politically frozen. And while that happens, Huawei gets more time. Every month that H200 shipments do not move is another month for Chinese firms to test domestic chips, optimize models for Ascend hardware, build software around local platforms, and shift procurement toward China's own supply chain. That matters because AI hardware decisions are sticky. Once a company builds around a chip platform, trains engineers on it, optimizes software for it, and deploys models through it, switching becomes harder. The longer NVIDIA is absent from the Chinese data center build-out, the more room Huawei has to become the default domestic option. That is the real strategic risk for NVIDIA. Not one missed shipment, not one delayed export license, but the possibility that China's AI ecosystem starts building itself around a different architecture. And if that happens, the world's second largest AI market may slowly become less accessible to NVIDIA, no matter what Washington approves later. That is why this story matters far beyond one summit. It shows how the AI chip war is entering a new phase. At first, the conflict was mostly about restrictions. The U.S. tried to stop the most advanced chips from reaching China. China tried to find ways around the restrictions. NVIDIA designed modified chips for the Chinese market. Regulators adjusted the rules. The cycle repeated. But now, China's response is becoming deeper. It is not just looking for temporary workarounds. It is trying to build a domestic AI compute stack. Huawei chips, DeepSeek model optimization, Alibaba T-head production, Tencent confidence in rising local GPU supply, government supply chain reviews, domestic procurement pressure. Taken together, these pieces point to something bigger than a short-term reaction. They point to a long-term industrial strategy. And that strategy creates a difficult question for the global AI industry. Who decides the dominant AI hardware architecture in China? Is it technical performance? Is it price? Is it software maturity? Is it government policy? In a normal market, the best combination of performance, cost, and developer support would win. But in China's AI market, government direction is now shaping the outcome. Beijing steering platforms toward Huawei Ascend chips instead of NVIDIA H200s means the competition is not only technical, it is strategic. That does not make technical performance irrelevant. If domestic chips are too weak, too unstable, or too difficult to use, companies will struggle. But if the gap closes enough, policy can push the ecosystem the rest of the way. And DeepSeek's shift suggests that the gap may be closing in some important areas, especially for inference. That is why Trump's comment that something could happen was both meaningful and limited. Something could happen politically, but that does not mean shipments will happen commercially. And it does not mean Beijing will change its strategic direction. U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer reportedly said semiconductor controls were not even a major topic in the bilateral talks. That detail is important because it suggests the summit was not really built around solving the H200 deadlock, even though NVIDIA watchers were hoping for a breakthrough. So the headline is not Trump failed to get a chip deal. The bigger headline is this: the H200 deal is already approved, but China may be choosing not to take it. That is a much more serious story, because it means the U.S. China AI race is no longer just about what America allows. It is also about what China refuses. And right now, China appears willing to leave NVIDIA's H200 chips on the table if that helps accelerate the domestic alternative. For NVIDIA, that is a painful trade-off. The company wants access to China. It wants revenue from Chinese AI demand. It wants its chips inside the world's largest technology markets. Jensen Huang has repeatedly argued that staying engaged with China matters, not just for sales, but for keeping Chinese developers connected to NVIDIA's ecosystem. But Beijing may be thinking in the opposite direction. If China keeps buying NVIDIA chips, its companies stay dependent on American technology. If it forces a shift toward domestic chips, the transition may be harder in the short term, but it could strengthen China's position in the long run. That is the strategic calculation. Short-term pain for long-term control. And that is exactly why Huawei is filling the space NVIDIA cannot fill. The H200 deal is not dead because one side forgot to sign a form. It is frozen because both sides are trying to shape the future of AI power. Washington wants control through export rules. Beijing wants control through domestic substitution. NVIDIA wants access. Huawei wants the opening. Chinese AI companies want enough compute to keep building. And the entire global AI market is watching to see which stack wins. So after all the summit theater, after the last-minute delegation drama, after the comments about something maybe happening, the reality is simple. The H200 deal is approved. The licenses exist. The chips are not shipping. And while everyone waits for a diplomatic breakthrough, China's domestic AI hardware ecosystem is getting stronger. That may be the real story. Not what happened in the meeting room, but what happened while everyone was watching the meeting room. Huawei gained time. DeepSeek adapted. Alibaba moved forward. Tencent looked toward rising domestic supply. And NVIDIA's China opportunity remains stuck in the middle of a geopolitical deadlock. Trump said something could happen. Maybe it still can. But for now, the future of AI chips in China is not being decided by one summit, one quote, or one export license. It is being decided by a much bigger question. Will China keep depending on NVIDIA? Or will it build the next phase of its AI industry on Huawei?